Hello, and welcome back to the NastyMetalProductions channel here at YouTube, and welcome to another Album of the Week video. This is episode number 226. Today, I am here to spotlight Born in America, the criminally underrated fifth album from Riot, originally released on October 14th via the Quality Records label. So with all that said, let's begin. After getting dropped by the Elektra Records label, the band signed with the Canadian indie label Quality Records. This of course brought forth frustration within the band, but now under a new label, the band fought all urges to disband the best they can to move forward with recording what would eventually turn out to be the final Riot album for Rhett, Sandy, Rick, and Kip, with them heading back to Green Street Recordings, located in New York City, with their longtime producer, Steve Loeb, but this time bringing in a guy by the name of Rod Huey as an associate producer, who would also serve as an engineer and mixer. With this team, they would lay down 11 songs, with one of them being a cover of the Cliff Richard's classic, Devil Woman. 10 were eventually chosen, with the cover song being chosen over an original that went by the title of Hot Life. This song would be left in the vault for a very long time. Initially, only a short teaser was released as a bonus track for reissues of Fire Down Under, but eventually the full song would get released as a part of the Archives Volume 2 through High Roller Records in 2021. The final set of songs would then be mastered by Howie Weinberg and then finally be released on October 14th, where it would be met with underwhelming responses, but over the years has seen some surprising reevaluation, with it now being looked as a criminally underrated album. So, featuring 10 tracks, clocking in at the length of 39 minutes and 37 seconds. These 10 tracks are, of course, kicking off with the title track, then into You Burden Me, Wings of Fire, Running from the Law, Devil Woman, Vigilante Killer, Heavy Metal Machine, Where Soldiers Rule, Gunfighter, and then finally ending with Promised Land. So there you go, folks. There's your 10 tracks. Over the years, this has seen some polarizing opinions, to which even former members like Rick Ventura stating that he felt it was contrived and that he prefers Restless Breed. But on the flip side, well-renowned Canadian journalist Martin Popoff, in his The Collector's Guide to Heavy Metal Volume 2, The 80s, he was quite favorable towards it, with giving it a 9 out of 10 in his guide. I, for one, love this album. Not only was this the ever first Riot album I had ever listened to, I had only been familiar with the song Thundersteel, but I felt compelled to try out the album that came before it, which actually intrigued me more than some of the others for some apparent reason. I think it had more to do with that it was released in 1984, and also at the time I was just wanting to kind of check out what Riot kind of sounded like in the mid 80s, or at least early 80s, and for some reason the year 1984 was just the one that jumped at me. So with that, what I did was I had head over to YouTube and typed in Born in America, and I clicked on the video, and what came out through the speakers, of course it was my parents' speakers for their computer that I was using at the time, and I was immediately hooked. And so I had the devious intention of downloading the songs. So once I did that, I had burned them all onto a CDR and just listened back to the entire album, and that disc never left my CD player. Of course, I do own it physically, so you don't have to be forever disgusted by my painful actions in 2009. So whenever I was dragged along to camping trips in the year of 2009, I brought this album along with me for those trips. But now, after years of spending time with listening to the other albums, have my initial opinions changed? No, obviously not. I still have the same kind of enthusiasm that I had when I had first listened to it. In a way, I put this album in the same lane as something like Fly on the Wall from AC/DC or Let Them Eat Metal from the Rods, as albums that were initially balked at from the beginning but nowadays have a newfound audience who sees them for what they are, just like me. I think the difference though between this album and the previous ones, including the debut for Rhett Forrester, is that this one was more adamant on competing with the sonics of A Quiet Riot, who they felt was sort of stealing their thunder in terms of sales and overall popularity. Judas Priest, Motley Crue, Twisted Sister, Accept, and Scorpions, who all were getting more loud and heavy sounding, whereas people felt like Riot were getting maybe a little soft with Restless Breed due to it having a more standard 70s classic rock quality to it, which had fit Rhett's voice greatly, but maybe was not the appropriate album to have released in 1982, given what was coming out at that time. So in a way, the headspace for him afterwards was to see if they can reach up to the status of these bands, and by doing so, going for a more updated heavy metal sound. What resulted was an album that still had that signature Riot tone, but with the intensity and tone turned up to 11 here, making it a more metalized version of early 80s Riot. The songs like the title track, You Burnin' Me, which remind me of classic Y&T with its sharp melodies combined with its metallic-edged hard rock here, Where Soldiers Rule, and the cowboy outlaw vibes of Gunfighter, are all what I feel come close to being that updated version of classic early 80s Riot. Whereas songs like Running from the Law and Promised Land sound straight up Rhett Forrester period Riot. Running from the Law is a bit more bluesy, staying confined within the realms of the previous album, but Promised Land is pure classic rock, with it having some major Led Zeppelin overtones, given that Rick Ventura wrote this one, so it's definitely of his style. Check out Closer to the Flame from his band Riot Act for further proof of this. Then, we finally have the songs that showed where Riot's heads were at as when making this album. Those being the epic Wings of Fire, Vigilante Killer, and Heavy Metal Machine. All are straight up fist pumping heavy metal romps. But my personal favorite of these three headbangers is obviously Wings of Fire. From the beginning acoustic guitar intro reminded me of classic 70s era Judas Priest, with Rhett sounding calm and clean, but once this short piece has ended, it's all fire and brimstone. This song still gives me goosebumps, even just thinking about it. It's a hard-edged song that is built at a galloping pace that is peppered with high-octane solos, grand-like dual guitars, and Sandy Slavin's pounding drums, and with Rhett Forrester putting all of his heart and soul into this one, in a way foreshadowing the direction that Mark Rowley would take with the album, starting with Thundersteel. Of course, Heavy Metal Machine is tons of fun. Now, if there is something that has since changed for me with now viewing this album, is with the Cliff Richard cover. It's far from a bad cover. I thought for years this was a cool addition to the album, but I now begin to question that. As good of a cover this one is, was it actually necessary? To those who are now more familiar with the Archives Volume series that was released through High Roller, now hearing the full version of Hot Life, probably are now saying that was probably best that it was left unreleased, thinking that it's just filler, but I disagree. Taking out the cover and putting in Hot Life in its place, I feel would not have changed a thing. But overall, I still absolutely love this album, and I continue to regularly listen to this album. It gives me excitement whenever I feel down and out. This album lifts my spirits up. That to me, in the end, is all that matters. It's music, and music is supposed to do that. After this album, Riot would break up. Rhett went on to pursue a solo career, even collaborating with Jack Starr and members of the Rods for an album that goes by the title of Out of the Darkness, even participating for the Thrasher record in 1985 that goes by the album title of burning at the speed of light. In total, 4 albums that Rhett released after the breakup of Riot. Unfortunately, Rhett would have his life be taken away on January 22nd, 1994, after fighting with a thief who was trying to steal his car. Rhett died at the age of 37. As for Rick Ventura, he pretty much stayed low for a long time before making a big comeback in 2019 when forming his new band, Riot Act, with former Riot member Louis Kavaris. Sadly, Louis too would pass away in the beginning of 2020 due to COVID-19. Kip Lemming would join some bands, with one of them being a thrash band that went by the name of Harder Attack, which also had Sandy Slavin at one point, but is best known for having Glenn Evans of TT Quick, Nuclear Assault, and CIA. Sandy Slavin would at one point join Ace Frehley for a rather short period of time. Mark Rowley, of course, would form Narita, which then led into him restarting up Riot, which then got him signed with Epic Records, and from there on, the rest is history. If you want to hear more about my thoughts on Thundersteel, it will be found inside the USPM month playlist. Sadly, we lost Mark Rowley in the very beginning of 2012 due to compilations from Crohn's disease, which he had been diagnosed with for a long time. So there you go, 40 years to a vastly underrated album from Riot. For those who have spent years listening to this album, whether they are positive or negative, you can leave them all in the comments section below. But if you haven't, give it a chance. Hell, here is my advice to anyone who either blew this album off or never gave it a chance. Give it another shot. I recommend it. So with that, this is Heavy Thrasher saying I'm out, and I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.